Hello and welcome to Telling the Tale. I'm your host, Mitchell Farley Wolf, and I'm here today with Dustin Jackson. Hey Dustin, how's it going?
Mitch, I'm doing dandy. We're recording this really late today. It's a refreshing change of pace. Things are going to be a little different this week.
Yeah, it's a very special episode, I guess you could say. So, by the way, this podcast, it's called Telling the Tale. Dustin and
Thanks.
I, every single week, we're here in your earbuds, trying to elicit the sound tastes that it would be like to brain play the video games that Telltale made while they were still a company, from the years of 2004 to 2018.
That sounds pretty cool. I'll give it a listen sometime.
Well, yeah, actually, brief diversion. We talked about this. Now, it's wild to like actively listen to a podcast you're on, right? Because you already heard it. You were part of it.
Yeah,
but I did hear once from a little bird. A little birdie told me. Dustin has literally never listened even a little to this podcast, so he doesn't know the theme songs I do. He doesn't. There's nothing that in the podcast that Dustin knows about that he wasn't exactly here for.
Yeah, that is 100%. I have no idea. I didn't even know we had a theme song, to be perfectly honest.
Okay, well that one's just bad because I've told you about that. But
oh right, I guess that one's more on me.
Dustin, why are we here today? Because we told the audience that we wouldn't come back until we had like a big honkin' mega episode for the entire collection of cases in CSI Hard Evidence.
Yeah, I guess we just didn't want to.
Yeah, that's tough. Okay, look, here's the deal. CSI games are harder for us to play than other Telltale games for a myriad of reasons. One of which is technical. The way we do CSI games is different from all the other games. Dustin plays it on his end, and I watch him stream it to me over Discord. It's a fine enough system, but it does require like a lot of people to be free at the same time.
I guess it is a fine enough system for someone who doesn't have to play it, yeah.
Yeah, well, okay. The other reason it's hard is because these games are just frustrating. They're just frustrating in a way that video games aren't.
Yeah, you know what? I'll just come out and say it. This is at least a step up from the last one. It does a lot. It does a lot that makes it a lot smoother.
So let's just head into what we're going to talk about this episode.
Okay.
CSI Hard Evidence came out on September 25th, 2007, but we are playing the Wii version, which came out on January 15th, 2008, about 4 months later. So not very far away, and also different from the PS2 version of 3 Dimensions of Murder that we played for the first 3 Dimensions of Murder, the first Telltale CSI game. The Wii version actually was developed by Telltale.
Ooh.
At this point in their history, even though it's a 1-year difference only, they are now fully immersed in console game development, which is a big step for the company.
That's true.
It's true.
I agree.
I'm so glad that we're not standing on opposite sides of that argument. That would be a weird one to throw down.
You and me are on the same page here. And yeah, the PS2 version, I won't sugarcoat it. It was not very good.
Yes. So we were really nervous about it because the PS2 version was especially not good, even though that game I think in general is not great. But the PS2 version is especially not good because Sony had a specific mandate that all PS2 games at a certain period of time needed to be fully 3D. And I mean, this game was 3D, but what it meant to Sony to be fully 3D was you could physically explore the 3D environment. Which meant that a game that was about like static screens and sort of turning the camera rather than actually exploring turned into a game where you have to walk around a space in first person and then like zoom in on a clue physically. It became so labor intensive, so frustrating that it was even though it wasn't like the time that we took the hiatus from the podcast, it's definitely what filtered into us taking that 1 month hiatus from the podcast.
Yeah, Mitch, try playing it.
Yeah, again, no thanks.
Yeah, you thought you had it bad.
I will say, for this specific kind of game, me yelling at Dustin over a microphone feels about... I felt like I played it.
Wow, that doesn't make me feel better.
I guess it's not supposed to, but also it's an interesting... I think it says much more about the game than you or me. It's a game where, like, if you tell it what to do, and you have a really good idea of what you mean when you're speaking, and by it I mean Dustin, it's effectively the same as playing the game. That is the same as a lot of these point and click adventure games from the early Telltale era. That's not special, but it's helpful in, I guess you could call it a form of remote play. Is how we do it.
Yeah, I mean, at least you're there. You being there does make it more tolerable, I guess.
So, like we said, we wanted to come back when we had, like, all of the episodes, or maybe do them in batches, like 2 batches. We didn't do that. We played exactly 1 case out of the 5 in the game. And we played the tutorial level, which was not nearly the length of a regular case, but it's something.
It was a fun little thing, I guess.
So if you're looking at the length of the podcast, and I don't know yet how long it's going to be, but I assume not long. That's why. We're just doing 1 case today. Case 1, Burning for You. With all the other cases in the game, it was designed by Greg Land and Mark Darren, and written by Max Allen Collins and Greg Land. Greg Land definitely seems to be the major orchestrator of this game.
It was his passion project.
I guess you could say that CSI Hard Evidence from Year of Our Lord 2007 was Greg Land's passion project.
Yeah, you could make the choice to say that.
So maybe to pad out the podcast a little bit, before we talk about Case 1 Burning for You, do you want to talk about the training level we did?
So our training level, it was very basic. It was just a little case of, who stole the donut? And It basically just ran you through your systems, your tools, picking up evidence, calling people in. It's all everything we already knew how to do.
Yeah, so I requested... So we tried playing this twice, and the first we just weren't in the right mindset, so we gave up immediately. But the second time we played... I requested that Dustin click on the tutorial level, because we didn't do it the first time. Because we thought, hey, we're 2 of the only... I mean, you are one, I am not, I guess. One of the only people in the world who've probably beaten the PS2 version of 3 Dimensions of Murder.
Yeah.
Not very many people. I think it's in the tens of thousands at most.
Even that might be generous.
Yeah, a few thousand, I bet, is probably more accurate to how many people beat it.
I would assume, yeah, most people who bought it probably stopped at some point while playing it.
But yeah, the guy from the show, remember, this is a TV show. It's kind of hard to remember that sometimes when you're playing these games. It feels very much like its own brainworm.
Yeah, it just so naturally fits the gaming landscape like a glove.
Okay, that's a lie. But I actually feel what I said a little bit. It's this vibe of CSI has so uniformly felt like its own thing that even though I've seen episodes of the show from this era, it just feels like its own thing. It's its own brand of video game. The same way that GoldenEye 007 kind of feels like, it's its own... It's a James Bond thing, but it's definitely its own video game. You know what I mean?
It stands on its own rather than feeling like an adaptation.
Yeah, it's that, but for bad things.
Yeah, it's in the not as good way.
So Gil Grissom, who I assume is maybe the main character of the show. Again, I don't know. But his donut's gone. And you find it. And it turns out the guy he got the donut with thought he wasn't going to eat it, so he ate it, and that was the mystery. But along the way, we found out how tools work in this game, and they're a little different. Dustin, you want to talk about that? Because you're the one that actually used them.
So, in the original game, it was like a radial, right?
Yeah, it's a radial,
you had your tools.
And you really have no idea other than like your own intuition which tool is the right one. If you want me to freak out, go back and listen to the 3 Dimensions of Murder one, where I, again, someone who did not physically play it, am detailing my war stories with the tools.
Yeah, like I said before, you thought you had it bad. I was at my wit's end with that. But here, it is done better. It kind of better. It's not perfect, but it is a big improvement in that instead of just clicking on random tools and seeing if they're what you need, now the tool you need will just pop up out of your equipment and be like, here you go, here's what you need.
Sometimes there will be a few options, and you can still pick wrong, but I think even that is so much more generous.
Yeah, it's even if it's not perfect, even if it's still like, you got it wrong, it's still way better.
And it does seem like a lot of the different kinds of tools you were using were consolidated, because in the last game we were like, okay, so we had some sort of spill, and if it's blood that has been dried, it needs this powder, and if it's blood that's still wet, it's this other powder, and if it's semen, it's this other thing, and if it's it's so many different little chemicals and ways to get basically the same sorts of things. Like all of those are just sort of bodily liquids, and they're all the same. In the real world, you take a cotton swab. That's what you do. And in this, you've got so many other things to do. But in Hard Evidence, basically there's like a liquid collection tool. It's so much better.
It's so much better. And I gotta be honest, Mitch, that alone really elevates this game over the last one. I was going out of my mind last game with that, and it's still not a great game, but I do think it has more. I don't want to say it has more going for it, but
no, it doesn't.
It's definitely more bearable to me.
Yeah, it's a game that like a lot of the later Telltale games, we've talked about this a lot with Walking Dead. This is a formula itself that lives and dies on the interestingness of the cases, and they aren't so far. Yeah. I mean, we'll get to it. We're still just talking about the game frame as a whole, but between not having that Sony mandate that this port of the game be like first person exploratory, and the tools being consolidated, plus I think an ethereal like just a little bit betterness, like everything's just a little bit better.
Yeah.
In a small, very slight way, not like a lot, but
it definitely feels like a lot. I think these small changes really go a long way.
Yeah, but in terms of what actually changed, it's not much, right? Like it's like literal changes. There aren't too many, but they feel like they all add up together to make a game that is actually playable.
Yes, 100%.
For comparison,
it makes me probably like it a little more than I should. Like, it's still not good, but after that first game, this just feels like a whole such a bright spot.
Oh, okay, listener. So, okay. Listener, you and me come over here. Dustin's going to do his own thing for a second. Let me tell you something. So, Dustin was complaining the whole time. And then as soon as the case ended, he was like, that was so much better. And I'm like, I know it was, but you didn't have a good time. And I think you're trying to convince yourself that you did.
Well, yeah, but I don't know. Like, after the absolute nightmare,
I just think we should be more honest with our feelings. I know you didn't have a good time.
Mitch, I'm just telling you what I'm feeling in my heart right now.
All right.
I'm not saying it's The Walking Dead Season 1 or anything.
Right. Correct.
because it's CSI hard evidence for the Wii.
So, another point of comparison for this game and the first CSI game that we played is that the first CSI game that we played basically required us to go through a walkthrough. And because Dustin might be the first person in the entire world to play through 3 Dimensions of Murder all the way on the PS2 version, the only walkthroughs that were available were for the PC version, which worked well enough, but constantly had little things that didn't carry over because, I mean, it was a from the ground up port.
Yeah.
So some little steps of doing things are going to be different. And of course, like the positioning of the camera angles and stuff were wildly difficult to figure out. And we had to do that all ourselves because that wasn't even a factor in the PC version. In this game, we didn't use a walkthrough at all.
Yeah, it was so straightforward, which you know, it should just be how it is. But yeah, after the last game, I was like, what a smooth trip this was this time. We didn't have to ever.
I don't know if it was so straightforward, but it was definitely...
I think
it can't be overstated how rough of a time we had with 3 Dimensions of Murder.
Yes, exactly.
So the point of comparison is it's just miles away.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe as we go, my opinions will sour. But I do think this at least made a good first impression. Being like, hey, see, we fixed some stuff.
Yeah.
And that's good. I don't want to downplay that.
So, while we got you happy, let's talk about Case 1.
Oh, no.
CSI Hard Evidence Case 1 Burning for You. You were accompanied by Nick Stokes in this episode, or case, in this case. Nick Stokes, I imagine, is a prominent character in the show. He's sort of got a southern accent a little bit. And he's a little card. He's a character.
He's pretty good. I feel like our partners in 3 Dimensions of Murder were so hit and miss, but so far I've liked this guy.
Yeah, Nick Stokes is all right. He's got a very dry wit, I feel.
Yeah, exactly.
Something else. Another little quality of life improvement is that on the machines in the lab, we talked to the whole structure. By the way, if you listen to the 3 Dimensions of Murder episodes, which might be required listening for this because it's so much of just a comparison between this and that. The structure is the same. You get one guy from the show to accompany you everywhere. You go around, you investigate people. You need warrants to search for their stuff in their houses. And then you take the evidence that you find and you plug it in the lab's computers where you have a DNA evidence machine, a chemical analysis machine, a fingerprint comparison thing, a comparison microscope, and you've got... You just use the collection of that evidence to build a case until you have an arrest warrant, at which point you can arrest the person you think did the murder. There's always a murder. And then you win the case. That's the whole thing. That's always what it is. So this time, they found a cab driver in his taxi burned alive.
Oh no. Do you remember what his name was? It was like Bob something?
Bob Castens.
Bob Castens.
I remember because I wrote it down.
That's a good way to remember.
Yeah, in fact, I know every character's name in this episode because I wrote them down.
Wow. I don't, because I didn't.
Yeah, so Bob Castens, you throw him in the morgue, you look at his body, he's covered head to toe in white nationalist tattoos, white supremacy tattoos. So we know this guy's like, okay, well, we're going to solve your murder, but we're not like cool with you. Which is a weird vibe that CSI tends to do a lot, I guess.
Yeah, it pins the victim as like this big piece of shit. Remember in the first one, like the lady at the art gallery who got killed, and it's like, oh yeah, she sucked. She was awful, but I didn't do it.
Yeah, or how the like we're always made to arrest the person who's actually having a tough life and like being abused and pushed to extreme And then the victim is like, oh, well, I was shitty and deserved it in every way, but I am dead now, so you have to serve me as a member of the public. And like,
yeah, you got to be on my side.
I understand that's a realistic part of the job, but also
it doesn't feel good.
Why make that the game?
Yeah, just have the person who did it be the asshole you want to put away.
Yeah, you'd be so much more motivated to... I guess when you have that kind of story in a show, it looks at the conflict of the investigators. They don't want to help this person, but they do want to help all people. So there's you get some of that interesting conflict of heart. Yeah, that's good for shows. But in a game, you want to be motivated to actually do the thing. And if I'm like, well, I don't want to save this guy. I don't want to find this guy's killer. I don't care. Well, then the detective, am done. Like I'm emotionally reluctant to continue.
No more of this, man.
Yeah, I want this man done. So. There's 3 people you go around and interview because their various pieces of evidence points to them. You've got Ed Freeborn, also named Edzel Danville.
This guy's a real character.
He's renamed himself Freeborn because he's just feeling pretty free at the moment.
Yeah, he's... boy, how would you describe this man?
Well, he's definitely like a burned out hippie guy.
Yeah.
He's homeless, and he has used the hospitality of his 2 friends, Liz and Deborah, a lesbian couple, to sort of mooch off them for a while. But they kicked him out because he was. Because he had an affair with Deborah, and Liz got upset. No, he had an affair with Liz.
Opposite. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Deborah got upset about that, and Deborah kicked him out. All of this takes like the entire case to find out, because no one wants to tell you the whole story immediately. For some reason. Like, that part doesn't even matter. I don't know why he didn't bring that up. But
yeah, that doesn't really play into the murder that much. I mean, it kind of does, but it doesn't... It really doesn't come together until later, which I guess is the point.
I wrote down here in my notes that Dustin thinks Nick Stokes rules.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
I think you said something about Nick Stokes at this point after being introduced to all the characters that you're like, man, Nick Stokes rules.
He rocks.
Yeah, maybe you should watch the show.
No. That's okay.
So Ed Freeborn is now, Edzel Danville is now sleeping in the windmill at an abandoned mini golf course, which is an inspired setting.
You gotta admit, this has a little more character to it than the last one, at least.
Yeah. The other 2 characters you introduce are Liz and Deborah, who we just talked about. They have an amazing home. The inside of their home is so cool looking.
Mm-hmm. They got like the fire pit.
Yeah, the architecture, like the walls, it's like a wooden Epcot ball, almost.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's like made like a triangular tessellation ball shape. That's their house. It's cool.
I want to live there. How come these fake video game characters get to live there?
Yeah, I wonder if this is based on a real house. Because it's just like in the suburbs in Las Vegas, but it has this.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. Anyway, so you find out all 3 of these people have reasons that they would kill Bob Castens, which isn't that always the way.
They can't just make it easy for you.
Yeah, so Deborah went to high school with Bob, and they dated before she realized how like racist and homophobic and supremacist he was. But as that became apparent, and also as it became apparent that she was a lesbian, she broke up with him, and apparently he's been harboring this obsession with her ever since. Another reason to hate Bob Castens. Another reason to not
Bob.
want to solve this murder.
Yeah, they really paint him in an unflattering light, which, he could just be dead. We could just say, I guess the case is unsolvable. Sorry. I guess his car must have combusted on its own.
It's worth bringing up that the reason you are pointed toward Deborah and Liz is that you find a torn piece of a pamphlet that they were handing out for basically their Burning Man event.
I forgot about this.
And you find that in the car where Bob had been burned alive. And it's just the part of the pamphlet with Deborah on it, and he circled it and wrote the word bitch in all capital letters and then drawn an arrow to the circle.
That's how you know.
Yeah, that's YouTuber thumbnails in 2007, way ahead of its time.
What do you think he was planning to get out of doing that?
He was just letting off some steam.
I guess so. Like, was he gonna give this to someone so he can be like, there, just so you know, she is a bitch?
Well, maybe his therapist said that he should try journaling, and this is really the only thing he had to write about.
He's not so good with the spelling.
He just doesn't have other personality traits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He puts it up on his fridge to remind himself.
He slaps it on, under his rear view mirror, and he just smiles.
It brings him joy.
It reminds me of home when I'm driving the taxi. So that's Deborah's thing. So very clearly a good reason to kill Bob if she did it, because Bob's been back in town recently. He wanted to connect, and she was like, I don't want to, and also I've been in a long relationship with my girlfriend. And then Bob turns out to be not just homophobic, but a serial gay basher. He's been arrested for it many times. Mm-hmm. And the idea that his one and only has passed him over, not just for someone else, but a woman. Oh my God.
No.
Yeah, I guess it's worth bringing up. A video game with a lesbian couple in it that is portrayed relatively well, I'd say, in 2007. Yeah. Pretty uncommon.
That is a rare. Yeah.
I mean, it's still uncommon today at least for mainline or mainstream video games. But at the time, I honestly have no conception of if it happened earlier than that.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly can't think of any. And they at least paint Liz as not a super great person, but the other one's Deborah, right? You said.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Liz, I don't think she's painted as a bad person as much as. Well, I guess she had an affair.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And she's constantly burning things, so that's Liz's deal.
What a character! You know what? They do a good job of making these guys have some character traits, some memorable character traits so far. Anyway,
it's so over the top. It's so on the nose. This guy was burned alive, and then you go in the backyard of Liz and Deborah's house, and you find Liz, and she's building something called a fire temple. She her whole thing is she's an artist, and her medium is fire.
This is an Ocarina of Time prequel.
And Liz is the fire temple.
Yeah, after this, maybe the next chapter has a forest temple, a spirit temple.
They call her King Dodongo in the biz, but
in the biz.
So Dustin, out of
Yeah.
some homeless guy who really didn't have any reason to do it, Liz, who was constantly harassed by this person, and Deborah, who is a serial arsonist, and also would maybe want to look out for her girlfriend, who was harassed by this guy. Uh-huh. Of course, Ed is the guy that did it.
Yeah, of course. What was his motivation for it again? Why did it turn out he did it?
So, even though Deborah and Liz kicked him out of their house, he still really respects these people. He calls them the fire goddesses, which is funny. But he's always low on cash. So what he thought he'd do is like, well, you know what? You know who I could get cash from and not feel bad about it at all is Bob Castens. So he goes in the taxi. He like gets Bob to say like, oh, okay, I'll give you money, and then he gives him a bunch of money, and he pours a bunch of turpentine on him to scare him, and then lights a match again to scare him and says, you better not mess with Deborah anymore because she's a good woman and you're mean.
You're a bad man.
And then, due to clumsiness, drops the match and burns this guy alive.
Oh, man. You know what, Mitch? If they keep this level of fun throughout the rest of this game, I think I'm going to have an okay time with it.
I mean, it's fun now that we're talking about it, but like we didn't laugh when we found out how he died when we saw. Like, it was just boring.
Yeah, but it's funny in retrospect.
It is funny in retrospect, yeah. Well, 30 minutes in, we're done.
Yeah, that's about it. But
anything else you want to bring
up? Let's see, what else? I guess that's it. Like we said, it was pretty straightforward, a lot easier to get through than 3 Dimensions of Murder.
Yeah.
And that's mainly due to the tools, but also the improvements with the lab.
Definitely.
It's weird to me that the case started out, you had to use the mobile lab.
Mm-hmm.
But then immediately after, it just lets you go back to the normal lab.
They've done that a few times in the first game, too.
Yeah, just go to the lab.
Yeah.
You're doing the same shit.
I bet in 2007 we were still very gadget focused. This was before smartphones sort of made us completely jaded toward the Inspector Gadget mode of technology fantasy. So like
America
the idea that there's
so
a van with the whole lab in it, maybe that was a huge part of the show. So you got to have the van lab, and then you just go to the real lab.
I guess that's true. It's not like it's a detriment to the case. I mean, you're still just doing all the same shit anyway.
Yeah. I this is a big thing. I wonder whose idea it was to make a video game about the TV show CSI. Who came to who? Do you think Telltale came to the network that owns it, which I actually don't know? Maybe NBC? Do you think they went to them? Who's to say? And said, hey, we could make a game of this? Or do you think... Because there were other CSI games in the past by that other company.
Yeah, CSI games came out before Telltale. So I wonder, maybe they were just shopping around looking for someone to make these? Or maybe Telltale did go to them. Who's to say? That would be interesting to find out, though.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to Greg Land about that.
Yeah, that'd be... I would be interested to know, because even if these games aren't particularly good, I do think I have fun talking about them. And yeah, I am kind of curious about stuff like that. It does kind of feel like a mini event.
Yeah.
In terms of this show.
So I don't think we were going to do it for each case, but because we're here and because we only have one case, let's do some segments. Dustin, I have a golden moment.
What's your golden moment, Mitchell Wolf?
Seeing the cool house shape that Deborah's house is. That's it.
Yeah, that's a good golden moment. I like that. That is a cool house. Good for them.
Yeah, I want it. I want to live in that house.
It's like both cool, but also like not that show-offy, because you go into like their bedroom and it's like pretty small, but it feels kind of cozy.
What do you got? What you got?
For my golden moment?
Mm-hmm.
The tools being better to use. Just the realization.
that moment when you realized?
Yeah, the moment when I realized, oh, this is gonna be way better.
Yeah, I'm really glad we played the tutorial. Even if we would catch up on all of that stuff as we went pretty well.
We didn't learn anything from the tutorial, but I thought it was kind of a cute idea having it just be like, oh, someone took a donut, and it's like, oh, I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, well, being in a controlled environment to really, like, step by step appreciate what this game is different from the first one, that was pretty nice.
I agree.
And also the donut thing was stupid. My weekly guy, I think I gotta say, is Ed Freeborn.
He's pretty good. Just the way he talks is very interesting.
Yeah,
every time he was on screen, I was captivated.
I didn't write down any quotes, but the way he described just his whole lifestyle, is pretty intoxicating.
Yeah, like he just in this guy alone, he has more personality than like anyone in the first game in 3 Dimensions of Murder.
Oh, for sure.
I couldn't tell you any of them. And here, I remember this guy. I remember the couple. I remember our helper, whose name I don't remember.
Yeah, you don't.
What was
I guess
his name?
Then Nick Stokes.
Nick Stokes. He's my weekly guy. He was pretty good.
Nick Stokes. Good for you. You got one.
Yeah, he's a good first helper. I don't know if it's gonna. I guess it's gonna be like 3 Dimensions of Murder, where we have a different helper in each.
Yeah.
I do like that. I do like that we get different flavors of helper.
Because I don't
Some
think
better
Nick
than
Stokes,
others.
He doesn't seem like he's the main character of the show, so it'd be weird if it was him every time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then Sarah Seidel seems to be the person who is like on the sidelines of every episode. She works in the garage.
Yeah. She's the one who came into the lab a few times to help us out.
Yeah,
What's the name of the coroner guy again?
Oh, does it start with a W?
I don't remember.
Is it Robbins?
I don't think it's Robbins.
Is it Wobbins?
Is it Wobbins?
Is it Wobbins though?
He looks like David Cross if his skin turned gray in some parts.
Yeah, no, his. I went from looking at Nick Stokes' face and thinking, hey, I think the faces are a lot better, even though the Wii is not that much of a technological step up over the PS2. And then I looked at the coroner's face, the morgue guy's face, and his face was very bad.
Yeah.
He looked like a worm.
Yeah.
Like a worm's face.
A worm. I wish he was. Imagine how crazy that would be. Their coroner's just a worm.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm gonna eat some of this when you're gone. But I will say, in general, I do think this does look a lot better than 3 Dimensions of Murder. Part of it's the lighting. Mm-hmm. Like you said, the Wii isn't like a technological marvel, but you know, it still helps. Like, there were no moments in this. It's not like the first game where there were like dark rooms that are just pitch black and you literally cannot see anything.
Yeah.
And the character models are at least a little better. Like, I thought all the suspects had designs that were okay. What did Ed Freeborn, who did we say he looked like?
Oh, I thought he looked like Keanu Reeves, but you said
Keanu Reeves. I said
John Stamos.
John Stamos. Yeah. I feel like if you combine those two into one person, this is who you would get.
Yeah, and then slightly more generic than that would be.
Yeah. But in terms of CSI, I feel like they did a good job with these characters.
Yeah.
I hope they keep it up. If they keep it up with the following chapters, they just said, look, we got to inject some more personality. The last game was just flaccid. We got to make this one erect.
Okay. So unfortunately, Ed Freeborn won't come back in a later episode because he was arrested.
Know that. We don't know that. What if we have to call him in for something else in a future?
From jail?
How in 3 Dimensions of Murder, remember we some of these cases crossed over and we had returning characters.
Not the ones that were arrested though. Not the ones that we sent to jail. They stayed in jail.
Well, still, maybe we can get them out of jail. It's like, look, we're gonna bust you out of here. We're gonna let you out of here, but you gotta help us out on this mission, capiche? And he says, yeah, man.
He would say that, but I don't see that happening. I don't know. Call it an intuition.
We can live in hope.
Also, okay, one last thing before we go, and we're about done, by the way.
This episode went a lot longer than I thought it was going.
Well, we need to think about another case after we've already covered like the basis of the game. It's going to go by in an instant.
Nothing. Yeah.
But I was looking up the release date and the designers and writers and stuff before we got going, like I normally do, and I accidentally saw just for this episode, just this first episode, a plot spoiler, or so I thought, and I didn't mention this to you, but it said on the wiki that I found this information on that Liz did it.
Oh.
Liz did not do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ed did it.
What's up with that?
So that
Are
was
they
a
just
lie.
giving fake spoilers?
I think so. I think they were trying to like protect the twist.
Okay. I mean the twist.
Yeah.
As if it's this crazy. No way! I can't believe it was Ed Freeborn.
He seems so chill.
He seems so cool and chill in that miniature golf course house he has.
But yeah, they lied to me. Well, I'm glad because I didn't want to be spoiled. That was that was an accident. But also, I'm somehow, even though I didn't want to be spoiled, I am frustrated they lied to me.
Yeah, where's the trust these days?
Yeah, what's up with that? Well, that's been case 1 of CSI Hard Evidence, Burning for You. Join us next week as we talk about any number of CSI cases.
I was just going to say, I think, even though it wasn't great, I still think it made a pretty good first impression just based on what we've been accustomed to with CSI so far.
Absolutely true.
I don't see it getting better than that, though. But we'll see.
No, I mean, we hit
Wouldn't it be crazy if by the last
format.
CSI it was like an actual game?
Yeah. Well, apparently the tone of these first two and the next two are very different, mostly because of the addition of Lawrence Fishburne. So the game could be very different.
You know what's interesting? Remember I linked you that list. I forget what website it was. It was a list of the top 10 highest rated by Metacritic. I know you're not a big Metacritic guy, but that's just what it was based off of. Top 10 highest rated Telltale games on Metacritic. And in the top 5, there was a CSI game. And the only reason it was there was because it had 2 reviews, but both were good reviews.
Would you have remembered if it was 3 Dimensions or Hard Evidence?
No, it's neither of those. It's one of the later ones.
It's 3 or 4. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's a thing, I guess.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, so we're going to keep playing this game. And until next time, we'll see you later.
Stay gold.
Stay gold.